There's a line from the musical Les Miserables, which is based on the French novel of the same name by the French writer Victor Hugo, which goes as follows. There was a time we killed our king. We tried to change the world too fast. Now we've got another king. This one's no better than the last. Now we fight for bread, and everyone's equal when they're dead. And from a Marxist-Leninist point of view, this is a very, very poignant line, because it simply drives home the point that despite the fact that the French Revolution was purportedly supposed to be a revolution that promoted the virtues of liberty, fraternity, and equality, by and large, it was anything but true. The French Revolution, by and large, liberated the bourgeois to an unprecedented extent. Just like the Magna Carta of Europe, a few hundred years before that, liberated the aristocracy or the barons, let's call them the feudal barons, to an unprecedented extent. But did it do much to improve the lot of the peasants, right? In the same way that the French Revolution, the lot of the working men, who Marx calls the proletariat, did not really change much after the French Revolution, right? Because you have to remember, by and large, the French Revolution was a bourgeois revolution, right? At least most of the leading figures, like Robespierre, were bourgeois elites, right? Now, here's the thing. Whether it was under the boot heel of a feudal lord in Europe or under the sword of a samurai in feudal Japan, the working man's lot did not change much after the French Revolution. He was simply passed over from one master to the next, right? So prior to the French Revolution, the masters were the aristocracy, the feudal lords, right? Basically the barons, people like that. And after the French Revolution, the masters, the former revolutionaries, became the new masters. So simply put, the French Revolution was simply a romantic way to term a management change. So, was the French Revolution a worthless revolution? Of course not. It's certainly better, to be living under a constitutional monarchy, where the king or emperor doesn't have absolute power to do with you as he pleases, right? He doesn't have the power, for example, to take off your head if he's not happy with you for some reason or other, right? However, the idea that, we now live in an egalitarian society where there's supposed to be equality between men, fraternity, and liberty, that is not a wrong idea. That is a correct idea. But the question is, who enjoys these privileges? Does everyone in a society enjoy liberty, fraternity, and equality? Or only a select group of people? You have to ask this question. You see, in the olden days, nobility was hereditary. That means it was by blood, right? So if you were born into the right bloodline, everything got passed down to you, right? And you got and you would get pretty much everything set for you in life through no effort of your own. So the revolutionaries basically create a system which is supposed to be a meritocracy, right? And I use the term very, very loosely because, you know, there is no such thing, as I mentioned in a previous video, there's no such thing as a pure meritocracy, because if everyone were analyzed or were judged on the basis of their merits, Instagram influencers would be peasants, right? They would be living like peasants, right? So here's the thing. First of all, meritocracy, at least pure meritocracy, doesn't exist, because sometimes it's not always that people who produce things that are of the most net value for society end up getting rewarded the most. Like, why do Instagram influencers or rich men's mistresses, for example, get rewarded more than janitors? When a mistress or an Instagram influencer is not really all that useful for society by and large as compared to a janitor, right? But here's the thing. You know, even if they abolished the old aristocracy and they created one that was supposedly based on merit and achievement, right? The people who become the new aristocracy are the ones who own capital. Those who have accumulated generational wealth, generational capital over several successive generations, end up circulating that capital among themselves and among their friends and families, aka their cronies, right? So you end up with a very ugly system, of course, which which is not immune to nepotism. I don't want to say an ugly system. Sorry, I was distracted by sunlight. You end up with a system, that basically is the privileges in the olden days, right, were passed down from king to prince, who became the next king, right? And then that king would pass down his privileges down to his son, and so on and so forth, right? That's how it was in the olden days. In the new aristocracy, which is based on capital, because let's face it, money makes the world go round, right? In this new aristocracy, the bourgeois, the capital owning class, right? And I'm not talking about the petty artisan, right? Like the satay stall owner or the hawker at the coffee shop. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the big business guys, like people who own the means of production. Not the small means of production. I'm talking about the macro means of production, right? That basically has the power to control the lives of thousands of people. Someone like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, yeah, right? These people are the new aristocracy, because these people will pass down their wealth, their privileges down to their children, right? Am I saying that inheritance should be abolished? Of course not. I'd be a hypocrite if I said that, right? I'm going to inherit someday, and my children are going to inherit someday as well. Of course, the idea of abolishing inheritance is a stupid idea, personally, because, you have people, in case of emergencies, for example, like, let's say a child's parents die, and what's that child going to do without an inheritance, right? So, of course, inheritance should remain. However, the question is not whether we should abolish inheritance and, basically push for more how shall we say? Let me rephrase that. The question is not about abolishing inheritance. The question is about regulating the power of this new aristocracy that has been created, right? You see, you think that we live in a free world without coercion, right? A free world where there's no tyrannical warlords or dictators regulating your life, telling you what to do, what to think and what to feel, right? You sure about that? Are you absolutely sure about that? Well, in the olden days, you see, if you were a peasant, right, working for a feudal lord, if you displeased the feudal lord, he could kick you off the land and you would starve to death, right? If you displeased the samurai, he would cut your head off, right? So in the olden days, sure, there was very brutal coercion. But in this day and age, do you honestly think that coercion does not exist? Considering the fact that virtually everything from water to basically water to electricity to all of your basic needs are privatized, you know, it makes it impossible, virtually impossible, for us to survive without earning money, right? And who do we sell our labor to? To the capitalist class. Those who own the means of production, and of course, those who inherited the means of production, right? You think that these people are equal to you? Well, before the law, perhaps they are, although you know, rich people's kids generally get away with a lot more than poor people's children, mind you. But here's the thing. Do you have fraternity and equality with the bourgeois son? Think about it. The bourgeois or the bourgeois son, they are the people who hold the power to hire and fire you. Let me ask you this. Why is it that most people walk on eggshells and stand on ceremony with their boss? Why do most people avoid criticizing their boss? In fact, or if they want to criticize their boss, they do it in a very careful, tactful way that they would not do with their colleagues or their friends, right? Why do people walk on eggshells with their boss? Let me ask you this. Your boss is not the king, right? Your boss is not an emperor, right? Technically, he's not. I mean, not technically, sorry. In theory, he's not. But why are you so scared of offending your boss if your boss really does not hold divine power over you? Because everyone knows that if you displease the boss, if you displease the boss or the boss's son or the boss's daughter, you know that these people can punish you by taking away your rice bowl, right? They won't punish you by kicking you off his land, you know, like a feudal lord, or by cutting your head off like a samurai does, but they will punish you by taking your rice bowl away. And they will kill you not directly, but indirectly, right? Like, for example, if you're in America, you can't afford medical insurance, you can't afford your basic necessities like food, shelter, you end up getting killed indirectly by them, right? So, the thing is that, yes, although we did abolish kings, we did abolish nobility, supposedly no man is beholden to another, right? Right? At the end of the day, we created a new type of nobility. A new type of nobility that will pass down their privileges to the next of kin, right? Just like the kings or emperors in the olden days passed down their privileges to the next of kin. But this time, they do it by passing down property, right? Passing down wealth. But here's the thing. Of course, it is human nature to want your offspring to have the best possible opportunities in this world. Only someone with a sick mind would not want their offspring to have the best possible opportunities. I'm not saying that this goes against human nature, but I am saying that we must not get complacent in thinking that we have created this utopian ideal, when quite palpably we have not. We have not created a utopian ideal, because there still exists a very clear-cut hierarchy between you and your boss. In the same way, there is a clear-cut hierarchy between the peasant and the feudal lord, right? Your boss enjoys liberty, fraternity, and equality, right? He enjoys the freedom to dress how he likes at the office while making the rules for you on how you ought to dress. He enjoys the freedom of you walking on eggshells. I mean, he enjoys you, the fact that you walk on eggshells when you criticize him. And of course, in this new system of this neo-nobility, it's getting really hot. I need to end this video soon. Simply put, everyone is equal, and yet, to quote George Orwell, some people are more equal than others, right? So yeah, the French Revolution did have its merits, of course. I'm not saying that there were no merits to the French Revolution, but revolution is a continuous process. We don't stop at that point and just, rest on laurels and be complacent. No, we continue the struggle. We continue this time. Last time it was the emancipation of the barons from, being taxed willy-nilly by the King of England, right? In the French Revolution, it was the emancipation of the bourgeois, right? The emancipation of the bourgeois to trade freely and do as they pleased, right? Without being controlled by a king. But this time, our revolution will be the emancipation. This is really the final conflict. It is the emancipation of the working class, the working man, right? Right, so that's this time. But we're not going to, that doesn't mean that we're going to be, to be turning ourselves into dictators in the same way that, the capitalists, the moneyed classes have now turned themselves into the dictators of the private sector. Basically by having unrestrained power over people, not legal power, but economic power, basically. So the fact of the matter is, I've said that even if you say that this new world that was created is a meritocracy, it is not, right? It is not, because the most hardworking people and the most, hardworking and industrious people do not necessarily get the most rewards. If that were the case, if the most hardworking people were the ones who got the most rewards, were true, then, every service worker would be pretty well-to-do, right? And the fact of the matter is that whether your boss promotes you or gives you a pay rise, it's not purely due to hard work or merit, right? It's also based on how much he or she likes you, right? If he doesn't like you, well, tough luck, no matter how hardworking you are, or how useful an asset you are to the company, it's very unlikely, unless your boss is a very fair-minded man, it's very unlikely that you're going to be getting a pay rise or a promotion, right? Because at the end of the day, the ones holding the chips, the ones holding the economic power are still the bourgeois. At the end of the day, what we want to do, what we want to achieve is true liberty, fraternity, and equality between men. And what that means is a dissolution of hierarchies, right? What that means is we want checks and balances to be maintained, and we don't want such a disparate degree of power. I mean, such a great power disparity between one class of men and another class of men. That is not what we want to achieve. We want to achieve true liberty, fraternity, and equality, right? We want to achieve a true revolution, right? We just want to make some changes that may not be very pleasant for some people, but the thing is, when you've been privileged for so long, equality will feel like oppression. When you have been privileged for too long, equality feels like oppression. So we continue the struggle for the emancipation of the working class. And of course, we don't stop until the struggle is over, right? So I like to end this video by saying, yes, we have equality, fraternity, liberty between men. Of course it exists, but there's no question about whether it exists or not. But for whom? Thank you.